Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Ethan escaped city life for peace in the desert, he thought he was finally free. But one night, a knock on the door shattered everything. Half his home was claimed by a shadowy HOA. What followed was a war for his house, his past, and the truth. The wind in the desert has a way of making you feel like the only man on earth. I remember standing out there on my porch with a mug of black coffee, watching the sunrise burn across the ridgeline like spilled gasoline catching fire. That morning, like many others, I told myself I'd made the right call. After the divorce and leaving Phoenix behind, this place was supposed to be my clean slate. My grandfather built this house with his own hands in the early 80s, back when land was cheap, regulations were looser, and men still believed in fences and freedom. I bought it from the estate after he passed. Everything was legitimate, clean, and county registered. No HOA, no bullshit. Just 50 acres of dust, Joshua trees, sun-baked rattlesnakes, and one concrete slab of a house that'd been waiting 30 years to come alive again. I poured a year of my life into restoring it. New roof, new windows, septic, plumbing, solar array, and a proper steel frame studio off the western wing for my architecture work. It was rough at first, but by the time I moved in, it felt like home. Not just a place to sleep, but a place to reclaim something that had been slowly pulled out of me by city traffic, phone calls, and lawyers. It was a Thursday when the knocking started. Not tapping, knocking. Serious 3 in the morning, get your ass out here now knocking. I rolled out of bed in a pair of boxers and a t-shirt, half thinking it was a coyote tearing into the trash or some lost backpacker looking for water. Instead, I opened the door to find 2 people standing on my porch in matching khakis, clipboards in hand, and bright-ass Sun Cactus Hills HOA badges clipped to their chests like they were on a goddamn military operation. One was a guy with a plastic smile and enough pomade in his hair to make him flammable. The other, a middle-aged woman with an artificial calmness that only made me more aware of the papers she was holding out toward me. "Mr. Garrett?" she asked like she didn't already know. "That's me," I said, stepping onto the porch. "We're here on behalf of the Sun Cactus Hills Homeowners Association. Effective today, we're notifying you that the eastern wing of this property has been acquired by the association." I blinked, then laughed. "You're what?" The guy chimed in. "We've processed ownership through the county's delinquent tax auction system. As of this morning, title to the eastern portion of this residence has transferred into HOA possession. You are being served notice to vacate that area by end of week." It didn't register at first. My face must have looked like a dog hearing algebra. "You're joking." They weren't. The woman handed me a manila folder. It was a mockery of legitimacy. A printed court order stamped with an official-looking seal. A map with a highlighter line drawn through my home like it was a fucking Cold War demilitarized zone. And a one-page agreement for cooperative access that I was apparently expected to sign. I looked up at them. "This is a joke, right? I don't owe taxes. There's no lien on this property. You'll need to take that up with the county," the guy said, smiling like he had a plane to catch. "But as far as we're concerned, possession has been recorded. You may continue residing in the unaffected portion of the structure. However, the HOA will begin modifying the eastern unit for community use." I laughed again, but it wasn't funny anymore. Community use? This is a private home. I didn't sell anything. There's no HOA here. This isn't even in your jurisdiction. The woman shifted her tone. "The eastern slope of the hill your property rests on was recently redistricted as part of the extended influence zone of Sun Cactus Hills. As part of the revised perimeter," I held up a hand. "I'm going to stop you right there. This house was built before Sun Cactus Hills even had dirt. You're not in my registry. You're not in my deed. You're not in my goddamn zip code." Her smile didn't budge. "Then we recommend legal counsel. Our enforcement team will return on Saturday to begin formal occupancy. We appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Garrett." And just like that, they turned around and walked back to their company truck, white spotless, with HOA decals on the door and a vanity plate. I stood there barefoot, folder in hand, wondering if I'd somehow woken up in a satire of my own life. I opened the pages again. The court order looked real. Watermarked, sealed, with a judge's signature and all, but something about it didn't sit right. The date was wrong, the formatting too clean. No case number, no notice of service, no certified mail, no prior warning. Just boom, Half your home now belongs to the community. Over the next couple hours, I tore through my files. Clean title. No delinquencies, no liens, nothing. Still, that didn't stop the knot in my stomach from pulling tighter with each minute. Just before sundown, I called the county recorder's office. No answer. After hours, I emailed my real estate lawyer from back in Phoenix, set up an appointment with my accountant, and I made a fresh pot of coffee, knowing I wouldn't be sleeping. Somewhere out there, a group of strangers had decided to carve a line through my home and call it theirs. I just hadn't figured out yet how far they were willing to take it. I was gone for 4 hours, maybe 4.5 if you counted the stop for gas. I'd driven into town that morning to pick up drywall and a couple of galvanized pipes for the outdoor faucet line. The old stuff was rusting out. Dry desert air doesn't mean the plumbing's immune to time. When I pulled up the drive, I saw the first thing out of place. A tan pickup truck parked behind my studio with no plates. 2 men stood outside it, both in matching neon green safety vests, hauling what looked like a panel saw and a pack of steel door frames up my back porch. At first, I thought it was a delivery to the wrong address, until I spotted the HOA logo stamped on the side of one of their toolboxes. I killed the engine, stepped out of the truck, and yelled, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The older guy, mid-50s, thick neck, bald with a sunburn, glanced at me with all the urgency of a man rearranging patio furniture. "Maintenance request," he said. "We're clearing the east annex for interior partition installation." "You're trespassing," I snapped, already jogging up. "You've broken into my home." He shrugged. "We've got authority from the board." "Board of what?" I barked. "This isn't a townhome. This is my house." He didn't answer, just nodded toward the door they'd come out of. My door, now hanging crooked on one hinge where the lock had been cut clean off. I pushed past him and entered the hallway that led toward my guest bedroom, and froze. Half the hallway was now blocked off by a newly framed wall, unfinished wood, and metal studs, with drywall sheets stacked nearby. My own furniture had been moved. The guest bed was gone. My bookshelf, the oak one from Grandpa's den, was sitting outside the room, tilted and half empty. And standing in the middle of my living room, clipboard in hand, was a woman I'd never seen before. She was in her early 40s, hair tied back, HOA badge clipped to her blouse like a sheriff's star from a Dollar Tree Western. She didn't flinch when she saw me, just flipped a page. "Mr. Garrett," she said, "I'm Dana Feldman, Interim Occupancy Coordinator for the Eastern Unit of your residence, designated E-Zone 14 under HOA Structural Repurposing Policy. Get out of my house," I said through my teeth. She barely blinked. "You are welcome to remain in the unaffected zones. The HOA has initiated a soft conversion plan for shared use property. We are here legally." "You broke my goddamn lock." "We had to access the unit. Lock integrity was compromised during transition." "You compromised it. That's called breaking and entering." She didn't answer. I turned and stormed out, pulling my phone from my back pocket. I called 911. The dispatcher asked if anyone was injured. "Not yet," I said, "but you better send someone before I fix that." 10 minutes later, a dusty Crown Vic rolled up. It was Sheriff Dolson, someone I'd spoken to maybe twice in the past year, mostly about a wandering cow and a busted irrigation pipe. He stepped out slow, tipping his hat like he was walking into a goddamn rodeo standoff. I met him halfway up the path. "Ethan," he said, scratching his chin. "Heard there's a dispute?" "They broke into my house," I said. "They cut the lock, moved my furniture, and started building walls." He glanced over my shoulder, saw the men still unloading tools. "And you didn't give anyone access. You think I'd just let a bunch of rent-a-carpenters turn half my home into a fucking community lounge?" He sighed. "I need to see the paperwork." I handed him the manila folder I'd kept since their first visit. He opened it, scanned the court order, then turned to the woman inside, who brought him a matching copy on HOA letterhead. He held both documents up, comparing them in the sun. "I'll be honest, Ethan," he muttered. "These look official. Court stamp, parcel ID, transfer notice." "They're fake," I snapped. "The seal's wrong. The judge who signed that hasn't been active in 2 years." Dolson squinted at the page. "That true?" I nodded. "You can call the clerk's office, but they don't answer until Monday." He rubbed the back of his neck like a man who regretted answering the call. "Well," he said finally, "until a judge tells me different, I can't forcibly remove them. If it's a civil property dispute, it'll have to go through court. I suggest filing a counterclaim. I felt heat rise to my neck. So you're saying I have to let them stay? I'm saying I can't legally kick them out if what they're holding is even potentially legitimate. If you want them gone, you'll need an injunction. That word felt like a slap. An injunction for my own house. Dolson gave me a sympathetic look. I'll write up a report, document the damage. If you file fast, a judge might freeze their activity. He drove off 15 minutes later, leaving me standing in the dust while my dog barked at the strangers tearing up his favorite corner of the living room. I went inside and locked every door still in my control. Then I moved my truck across the driveway, blocking any more deliveries. That night, I didn't sleep. The west side of the house echoed with the occasional thud of hammers from the shared use zone, which had once been my guest room, my reading nook, my grandfather's fireplace. Now it belonged to strangers, and I had the goddamn sheriff telling me to get in line. I woke up the next morning to the sound of a goddamn nail gun. They were still at it. Inside my house, my coffee machine sputtered like it shared my mood, spitting bitter sludge into a chipped mug as I stared out at the kitchen window. A man in a HOA polo was uncoiling Ethernet cable in the backyard like he was prepping a server room. Enough was enough. By 8:30, I was on the phone with everyone I could think of. Lawyers, land surveyors, tech guys, even a retired judge I'd once helped design an eco-retreat for every favor I ever banked I cashed in that morning. No more waiting. If the sheriff wasn't going to move, I was going to bulldoze this lie with evidence. First to arrive was Caleb, a private land assessor from Bisbee. Cowboy hat, sun-leathered skin, walked with the kind of gait that said he'd been chased by snakes and bureaucrats. He brought out drones, LiDAR gear, and a copy of the actual property map from the county assessor's database. He spent an hour walking the lot, scanning boundaries, and muttering curses about HOA overreach. "This place ain't even in their overlay," he said finally, tapping the screen on his tablet. "You're clean by about 400 feet. That jurisdictional expansion is pure fiction." Second was Mia Chen, an IT forensic consultant out of Tucson who specialized in digital signature analysis. Small, sharp-eyed, and not interested in small talk. I handed her the printed court order and the PDF file that the HOA emailed me after the sheriff left. She studied it like a detective at a crime scene. "Stamp was lifted," she muttered after 10 minutes. "They pulled this seal off a scanned probate record from 2 years ago, pasted it over a pre-signed blank form." I blinked. "Wait, you're saying..." "It's fake. Cut and paste job. Amateur hour." Third to show was Isaac Ray, property rights attorney, 60-something, sharp as a blade and meaner than a rattlesnake in a gym sock. He spent half the day cross-referencing title transfers, court filings, and tax records from his laptop at my dining table while I tried not to scream at the sounds of drills echoing from down the hall. "Let me make this perfectly clear," he said, looking up over his glasses. "The HOA has no legal claim to this house, no liens, no tax sale, no filing of shared ownership, and this order, fraud, flat-out criminal fabrication." He paused, sipping my burnt coffee. "Also, the judge listed here, retired, been fishing in Colorado for almost 2 years. There's no case number, no court docket. Hell, the document's not even properly formatted." I felt like I was breathing again for the first time in days. Rage and relief made a nasty cocktail. Then came the unexpected bonus. One of the HOA's private security guards, some meathead in wraparound sunglasses, wandered up to us while Isaac was photographing the broken lock on my back door. He didn't notice the phone in Isaac's shirt pocket, already recording. "You boys don't have to waste your time," the guard muttered. "Karen said her friend used to be a judge. Said it's all paperwork tricks. Nobody at the county even pays attention if you file on weekends." Isaac didn't say a word, just smiled and nodded. The audio was crystal clear. We wrapped by sundown. Mia emailed me a preliminary forensic report with a chain of custody appendix. Caleb uploaded geospatial survey maps showing I was nowhere near HOA land. Isaac compiled a legal summary and filed an emergency brief with the court requesting an injunction and enforcement action. But it wasn't just about paper anymore. As night fell, I watched the east side of my house glow with strange LED strips installed by people who didn't belong there. The fireplace was quiet, cold. My grandfather built that thing with stone he hauled from a riverbed in 93-degree heat. Now there was a goddamn microwave sitting where his tools used to be. But for the first time since they showed up, I wasn't just angry. I was armed. We filed at dawn. Isaac didn't waste a second. He had the emergency injunction request typed, formatted, printed, and submitted to the county courthouse by 8:30 that morning. By 10, we had a temporary restraining order signed by a real breathing judge, the kind who hadn't gone fishing in Colorado. The order froze all construction or conversion activity at my property until the matter could be heard in court. Finally, a legal finger on the scale. I taped a copy of that order to the front door. Then I taped another to the new drywall slab they'd erected in my hallway, just for emphasis. The workers showed up anyway, 3 of them in a rented van, all HOA subcontractors wearing branded shirts and no concept of jurisdiction. I met them in the driveway with a copy of the judge's order in one hand and a camera in the other. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. They turned around and left within 5 minutes. That night, Isaac submitted a second filing, this time to the Arizona State Attorney's Office. We were moving beyond just restoring possession. Now we were going after fraud, forgery, and malicious property interference. The complaint included Mia's report, Caleb's survey data, the audio recording from the chatty security guard, and high-resolution photos of the broken locks, ripped trim, and construction debris littering my kitchen. I couldn't believe how fast things started shifting after that. The county registrar's office returned Isaac's subpoena within 48 hours. No sale, no transfer, no tax auction. Nothing had ever been filed against my parcel. The office even attached a notarized statement confirming that the seal on the HOA's document did not match any issued by their system in the last 5 years. On Friday morning, I woke up to a local news van in front of my house. Someone had tipped off the press. I stood on my porch in work boots and a flannel shirt, sipping lukewarm coffee while a young reporter named Lacey Chen asked me questions with her mic pointed like a weapon. "So, Mr. Garrett, just to confirm, you didn't sign any agreement with the HOA? You didn't lose the property through taxes or default?" "No," I said. "This house has been in my family since the 80s. I've paid every cent, every year on time. What they're doing is fraud, plain and simple." "Can we see the room they occupied?" "I'm not stepping in there until the health inspector clears it," I said. God knows what they were wiring into the walls. The story aired that night on Channel 12. They used drone footage Caleb had offered and even included a screenshot of the fake court document side by side with the real one. It wasn't just compelling, it was devastating. The HOA didn't look like a group enforcing neighborhood standards. They looked like organized criminals. The next morning, my inbox was full. Some were just words of support, people who had heard the story and wanted to say they were outraged. But a few stood out. One message came from an older man in New Mexico who claimed the same HOA president had once offered to buy him out through a surprise claim of partial lot ownership. He'd refused, but she'd filed maintenance liens against him anyway. Enough to send his credit score into freefall. Another message came from a woman whose father lost access to part of his ranch when an HOA built a fence straight through his boundary line, citing a survey adjustment. Sounded familiar. Then came the biggest curveball yet. Late Saturday, I got a cease and desist letter, not from the HOA, but from their attorney, accusing me of slander, obstruction, and unlawful harassment of HOA personnel. They claimed that by denying access to shared community spaces, I was violating the spirit of cooperative living and placing stress on staff. I sent the letter to Isaac. He responded with a one-word email: amateurs. Still, they weren't letting up. The HOA's website published a press release that same night, referring to me as a volatile individual who had repeatedly failed to acknowledge shared ownership protocols and was currently under investigation by civil authorities. They even uploaded a photo of my house, half renovated, dust blowing across the yard, as if to say, "See? This is what happens when you don't follow the rules." I might have laughed if I hadn't felt like I was being digitally executed. Isaac assured me this was a desperation play. "They're trying to push a false narrative before we bury them in court," he said. "Stay calm. Let them talk. We'll answer in court filings." But I wasn't calm. I was awake. I spent the next 3 nights scanning property records, calling people I didn't even know I needed, and building a timeline. How long this had been going on, how many properties they'd tried this scam on, how many people had just rolled over and moved out. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was a pattern. And I wasn't planning on being the next name on their list. I was sipping my fourth cup of reheated coffee and reviewing survey photos on my laptop when I heard the sound of a power drill screaming inside my walls again. It was back. Despite the injunction, despite the news story, despite everything, I stormed out of my office and down the hallway. The drywall slab they'd built had been knocked back open. Someone had literally cut a clean square into it, turned it into a makeshift doorway again, and was now running new cable through the hole. Orange conduit snaked across my living room floor like a tumor. 2 workers, same neon vests, same smug indifference, barely glanced at me. Court said no more construction, I snapped, phone already in hand. One of them just shrugged. We're doing maintenance, not building. You can't stop us from maintaining infrastructure in a shared zone. Shared zone, I barked. This is a private home, you lunatics. You're not maintaining anything. You're vandalizing my house. The younger guy, mid-20s, and clearly not paid enough to argue, looked toward the window and muttered, "Just doing what the contract says, man." I took a video as I read them the judge's order aloud. They kept drilling. By the time the sheriff showed up, again, it was almost noon. Different deputy this time, younger guy named Ruiz, who looked uncomfortable from the moment he stepped out of his cruiser. "I can't remove them," he said, voice tight, "and they claim to be performing essential repairs to prevent code violations." "They caused the code violations," I shouted, pointing at the frayed wiring, exposed nails, and busted insulation hanging from where they'd carved through the wall like it was a damn piñata. "They cut a load-bearing beam yesterday. My water pressure's dropped by half. I don't even know if the septic system's still connected properly." Ruiz took notes, but he didn't stop them. I made sure my phone was recording every second. That night, the water shut off completely. When I checked the crawl space beneath the east side of the house, I found the main valve closed, with a bright orange HOA tag zip-tied to it. Unauthorized water usage suspended pending inspection. I was boiling. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a calculated strategy to make the house unlivable, to push me out, not with legal force, but with slow, choking pressure. Water, power, access, sound, air. The next morning, someone ran a generator behind the drywall partition, humming so loud it vibrated the floorboards. The entire east side of the house now glowed at night. Obnoxious LED strips had been installed along the baseboards. I could see them bleeding through the cracks under the door. I called Isaac. "They're daring you to lash out," he warned. "They want a confrontation. They want you to make a mistake." I didn't. But it got harder every hour. By Monday, my dog, Ranger, was so anxious from the noise and strangers that he chewed through the leg of the kitchen table. I had to sedate him just to keep him from shaking himself into a seizure. I moved my sleeping bag into the office, barricaded the doors I still controlled, and started eating out of cans. The house was turning into a battlefield, and I felt like I was down to my last trench. Then came the real bombshell. Caleb called me with a discovery. While cross-referencing the HOA's past permit filings, he stumbled on something weird. One of their construction vendors, Sierra Vista Site Solutions, LLC, was registered under the name Julia Levine, same last name as Karen Levine, the HOA president. I asked Isaac to dig deeper. Within hours, we found the full tree. Julia was Karen's niece. The LLC had no public website, no employees listed. It existed solely to receive checks from HOA funds. It was a funnel, a front, and worse, the LLC had pulled permits on at least 4 other properties across the county in the past 2 years, all near HOA boundaries. All cases with either construction accidents or forced remodeling initiated under partial ownership disputes. One of the cases involved a 74-year-old man who'd lost his back patio after an easement expansion he never signed. Another had reported a door being installed directly into her kitchen wall from the HOA's rec center. That one ended in a quiet settlement sealed by NDA. This wasn't just a scheme, this was a system. I sat in my darkened office that night, flipping through PDF after PDF, permits, property maps, drone footage, receipts, all lined up like dominoes waiting to fall. And then my security system pinged. Motion detected. I checked the feed. 2 men, neither of them HOA regulars, standing at the west gate with flashlights. One held bolt cutters. I spoke through the mic. "You're being recorded. Leave now." They hesitated, then ran. I called the sheriff again. "No units available? Call back if they return." I didn't sleep that night, but I did move something from the closet to my bedside. a 12-gauge Remington with rubber slug rounds, just in case maintenance got brave. The morning they served the first search warrant, I was halfway through a spoonful of cold chili from a dented can when I saw the convoy. 3 sheriff's cruisers, 1 unmarked SUV, a county vehicle with the seal of the Attorney General's office on the door, all of them coming up the dusty road like a cavalry charge. Only this time, they weren't coming for me. I walked out to the porch in silence, clutching my mug like a man waiting for the punchline to a long, ugly joke. Isaac had filed the fraud complaint just 5 days earlier, and apparently someone at the state level had finally looked at the growing pile of files, drone footage, fake orders, notarized lies, and whispered confessions and said, "Yeah, this looks like racketeering." The agents didn't speak to me directly that morning, but I didn't need a press briefing. I watched them head straight past my driveway, through the Eastern Trail, and up the ridge toward Sun Cactus Hills office complex, Karen Lavin's nest. The timing couldn't have been better, because the night before, Isaac had received something explosive. A whistleblower, an email from a burner address, no name, just a subject line. "They've done this before, twice." Attached were 3 PDFs, 2 property title screenshots, and 1 scanned article from a local paper dated 3 years back. It featured a man named Frank Dillard, aged 79, a veteran of 2 tours in Vietnam. The article described how he had been pressured to vacate part of his home after a local HOA filed a partial ownership claim tied to unpaid taxes that didn't exist. Frank had refused to leave. Within a month, construction crews accidentally severed his septic line. Then his electricity was rerouted for maintenance. Then, mysteriously, a permit was filed for a community meditation annex on what used to be his back porch. The end of the article showed a picture of Frank sitting beside a dusty trailer behind a gas station on the edge of Cochise County. The quote beneath it read, "I built that home myself. 40 years gone in a legal technicality no one could explain. It wasn't suicide, but it damn well felt like murder in slow motion." The second case was worse. A widowed woman in her 60s living alone. Her HOA reclassified her garage as multi-use storage under a clause buried in an old bylaw amendment. When she fought back, her water was disconnected. She was fined daily for neglected community assets, and her credit was torched with aggressive lien stacking. She ended up moving to Oregon to live with her sister. Her house sold at auction. The buyer, Sierra Vista Site Solutions, LLC, Julia Lavin. Isaac passed this directly to the AG's office. Apparently, that was the final nail. By afternoon, warrants were being served across the HOA's network. Not just Sun Cactus Hills, 2 other HOAs in the same regional umbrella group were named. The HOA board's treasurer was detained at his home. Another member of their legal team resigned within hours. But Karen, she doubled down. At 3:14 p.m., the HOA's official Facebook page posted a press release claiming they were the victims of a smear campaign orchestrated by anti-community agitators. It named me specifically, called me a disgruntled and combative individual who has endangered staff and residents alike. They even posted a blurry photo of me walking my dog, like I was a fugitive and Ranger was my accomplice. By 5 p.m., that post was gone, deleted. But not before half the county saw it and downloaded it. I didn't respond publicly. Isaac told me to hold. But that night, Channel 12 ran another segment, this time not just about my house, but about a pattern. They showed satellite imagery of the other properties, interviewed Frank Dillard, who now lived in a converted bus, and brought on a local professor who explained how HOA legal overreach has been quietly escalating for years in areas with little county oversight. It wasn't just a scandal, it was becoming a goddamn movement. The next day, an agent from the AG's office finally spoke to me in person. His name was Holt. Late 50s, not flashy, just tired. He carried a leather folder and a quiet look that told me he'd seen uglier cases than mine, but not by much. "Your case is the cleanest lead," he said, sitting in my gutted living room while LED light from the still-occupied East Wing flickered through the partition. "You've got time-stamped footage, digital forensics, a paper trail, and a motive tied to financial gain through property laundering." "Laundering?" I asked. He nodded. "The HOA registers the partial property, routes renovation funds to a shell company, then uses the modifications to increase the valuation before flipping it. They create their own comps. It's elegant, and it's felonious as hell." He handed me a copy of a document recovered during the search of the HOA office, a spreadsheet titled Acquisition Projections, Phase 3. My name was on it, alongside 6 others. Next to my name was the phrase, Status, E-Zone Secured, Occupant Resisting, Schedule Reassessment Q3. They hadn't just tried to steal my home, they'd planned for my resistance. I sat in silence after Holt left, staring at the sheet like it was a death sentence someone forgot to deliver. The names on that list weren't just potential victims. They were targets in a slow-moving land grab masquerading as community management. And still, the lights in the eastern wing glowed. Karen hadn't been arrested yet, but the walls around her were crumbling. The day they arrested Karen Lavin was hotter than hell. Not poetic, not symbolic, just literally 107 degrees by noon, and the air was thick with dust and wildfire smoke rolling in from the mountains. I stood barefoot on my porch, hose in one hand, watching dust devils twist across the road like they were clearing a path for judgment. At 11:46 a.m., 3 black Suburbans pulled up to the Sun Cactus Hills Administration Building. I knew it wasn't a visit. By noon, local news vans were racing to keep up. I watched the live feed from my laptop, mug of instant coffee in hand, as Karen Lavin was walked out of her glass-fronted office in plastic cuffs, wearing a leopard print blouse and what looked like tennis shoes. Her expression wasn't fear, it was rage. Rigid jaw, wild eyes, spitting words at anyone within earshot. The mic on the Channel 12 camera caught her shouting, "We were preserving the community. That house was a blight. I was protecting property values." That line repeated for hours across every news outlet. She wasn't apologizing. She was doubling down, even as the feds loaded boxes of documents into evidence vans, and her board members slinked out behind her with their faces covered in shame. Oh, or in one case, a beach towel. I'd like to say I felt satisfaction, but what I felt was relief. Cold, quiet, exhausted relief. It wasn't over, not yet, but the dam had cracked. The charges came fast: fraudulent acquisition of property, forgery of judicial documents, criminal conspiracy to obtain real estate under false pretenses, wire fraud, breaking and entering, vandalism, and obstruction of justice. 17 charges, 17 felonies. HOA board members were hit with conspiracy and accessory charges. 2 of them flipped within 24 hours. By the end of the week, depositions were underway. Karen refused a plea deal. Her lawyer, some hot shot from Scottsdale who'd never even litigated property law, tried to delay proceedings, claiming emotional stress and media bias. Didn't work. While the legal gears turned, I finally walked back into the eastern wing of my house. For the first time in over a month, I crossed the threshold with full legal backing, court documents in hand, and a locksmith at my side. The smell hit first: paint fumes, scorched wires, mildew from broken plumbing. The shared space they'd been converting was half-finished chaos. Electric panels torn out of the walls, Ethernet cable hanging loose from the ceiling, and drywall installed in random uneven slabs, like someone had started building a bunker and gave up halfway through. The worst part? They'd gutted my grandfather's old fireplace. The stone was chipped, blackened, the mantel ripped out and replaced with a mounted screen I didn't recognize. I felt something sharp rise in my chest. Not anger, not grief. Something colder. Violation. That same afternoon, Holt, the AG's agent, met me at the property to walk through the damage. He brought a forensic accountant and a contractor from the DA's office to begin estimating financial harm for the restitution case. What they documented shocked even me. Custom appliances stolen and replaced with used junk. Foundation cracks from modifications done without permits. Solar inverter disconnected and rewired dangerously. HVAC ductwork severed. Septic line rerouted into nowhere. The house had been turned into a Frankenstein's monster, and I was supposed to live in it. I didn't know whether to laugh or burn the place down. But Holt gave me something better than vengeance: evidence. During the raid on the HOA office, agents recovered a document cache labeled Phase for Long-Term Occupancy Leverage. It contained internal emails between Karen and board members outlining plans to gradually increase psychological and environmental pressure on non-cooperative homeowners. Phrases like simulate abandonment, preempt code violations, and, no joke, leverage pest control notices were highlighted and marked proven effective. They weren't just stealing homes, they were breaking people. One of the emails included the phrase, "He'll leave on his own once the plumbing goes." They all do. He was me. That night, I got a call from Frank Dillard, the veteran who'd ended up in a trailer. He'd seen the news, said he was proud of what I'd done, said maybe now no one else would end up like him. He told me something that stuck with me. When they come for your walls, it's never just about wood and stone. It's about your line in the dirt. If you don't hold it, they move the line. I wrote that down on a scrap of insulation and taped it to the broken fireplace. Karen's trial date was set for early spring. She was denied bail after an attempt to contact a former county clerk turned up in court. Witness tampering. The HOA was officially dissolved by court order. Its assets, including office furniture, the HOA pool, and the ridiculous golf cart fleet, were auctioned off to cover fines and damages. Every property targeted by their scam was now under review by the county with priority restoration for the rightful owners. And the best part, my restitution hearing awarded me $870,000 in compensation, enough to rebuild, enough to make it right, enough to sue their insurance into dust if I chose to. The money was good, but it wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was this. The glow from the eastern wing was finally gone, and for the first time in months, I could walk into my living room and know that every inch of it was mine again. 6 months later, the desert was green again. Monsoon season had come early that year. The brittle sand turned to clay, and brittle shrubs bloomed like they'd been waiting for a reason. I stood on the roof of the guest wing, newly rebuilt, leveled, and sealed, watching clouds roll in over the mountains, beer in one hand, nail gun in the other. The eastern side of the house was mine again. No wires snaking through the walls, no strangers whispering behind doors, no LED glow under the floorboards. I'd torn every part of their workout, down to the studs, rebuilt the fireplace stone by stone, using the same kind of river rock my grandfather hauled in back in the 80s. Sometimes you rebuild, not because it's practical, but because it's personal. The settlement money helped, sure. The insurance payout, the court-ordered compensation, even the HOA's auctioned assets, it all added up. I could have walked away, bought a condo somewhere, left the desert and its ghosts behind. But I didn't, because leaving would have made them right. It would have made me the next guy on a spreadsheet marked evicted through attrition, and I wasn't giving them that. Instead, I turned the house into a statement. I hosted my first open house in September, not for sale, but for survivors. People came from all over the county. A man from Benson who'd lost half his land to a rogue zoning board. A widow from Yuma who'd fought off her HOA when they tried to seize her rose garden under aesthetic guidelines. Even Frank Dillard came in his old van with a grin and a flask he wasn't shy about sharing. We sat around the fireplace and made plans. Real ones. By winter, a grassroots organization had formed, Desert Boundaries. Pro bono lawyers, land surveyors, and civic tech geeks joined up. We started tracking HOA abuses across the state, building a case for statewide reform. And we got attention. Local politicians, civil rights orgs, even one fed from D.C. who just wanted to observe, but stayed for 3 hours and left with a binder full of notes. As for Karen Lavin, she got 17 years. No parole. Her niece Julia turned state's witness. Most of the HOA board took deals. One fled the state and was picked up 3 weeks later trying to cross into Nevada with 20 grand and a burner phone. But in the end, that's not what I remember most. What I remember is standing alone in the center of my living room the night after the verdict came down, with Ranger curled up at my feet and the fire crackling clean for the first time in over a year. The walls were quiet. The house was whole. And for once, there was peace.